Quinte Connection. Thanks for joining us today as we're going to give you a business side of what's happening with COVID-19 in our community right now across the Bay of Quinte region. Joining us, though, the CEO of the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, Jill Raycroft, and the manager of the Chamber of Commerce in Quinte West, Suzanne Andrews. Suzanne, Jill, thank you so much for joining us remotely as well as we're all trying to practice social distancing.
Yes, for sure. I'm only on day 2 of working from home. We did close our office to the general public last Monday, but all staff had their own office, and we were, practicing social distancing within our workplace, which was fine. All of our meetings were being done, remotely through conference calling. But of course, with the new set of rules that came out on Tuesday, that all changed, and I'm now working at home. But Jill has been doing it for a little bit longer, because she was one of the travelers that came back. So maybe you can talk about your experience being at home.
Sure. So I arrived home from St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, I guess about 1 o'clock last Thursday morning. So we've been in self-isolation for a week, but we also had our son arrive from Florida, and our daughter came back from a school trip from Africa. So none of us were in what we felt exposed or vulnerable areas or at-risk areas, but certainly when we all came together, our self-isolation as a family began last Friday evening. So as much as I'm on day 7, I'm actually on day 5, and who knows what's going to happen when this all comes together. Either way, I've worked from home before, so it's kind of a return to something I'm not uncomfortable with, but it certainly can be a challenge. I'm an extrovert, so I'm using Facebook a lot more.
What have you been hearing, Jill, from the community and businesses across the Belleville region right now as we continue to see more updates daily from the provincial and the federal level?
Well, part of it is certainly just trying to drill down and curate information that is relevant to our businesses and making sure that the ones who aren't constantly getting feeds from larger organizations that they're a part of or other associations, that those businesses can get access to information. So we set up a really quick little distribution list with an email I sent out last Friday, just saying if you need to get COVID-19 info updates from me specifically, subscribe to this email list. So we had 43 subscribe right away, and so they get kind of a daily update. This way, I'm not trying to do an email blast to all of our members on a regular basis. We also transformed our website to do that. But to your point, what are we seeing? Everybody's kind of in flux. For the smaller retailers, they are definitely panicking. They don't know how, with April 1st coming up, whether or not they're going to be able to make their rent. And of course, the landlord is competing with the other issue of they have bills to pay as well. So it's moving all the way up to the top. And there have been some amazing resources put forward, but not all of them apply to everyone. So we're seeing some of the ones that are kind of getting caught falling between the cracks.
And Suzanne, what's happening over in Quinte West right now as you continue to adjust to this new working environment?
Yeah, we've been using a couple of tools. We probably sent out about 5 personalized emails, and we are sending them out to the main contacts for every one of our members. And it's a very it's a plain text email full of information. We understand that a lot of people are working from home. Some of them, especially in the Quinte region, might be working remotely from communities that maybe don't have great internet. So some of them are, using their data plans on their phones and making other changes. So we're trying to keep those emails. There's no images. They're not fancy, but they're chock full of information that our members are looking for. And the feedback and the comments I have been getting, and the thanks from our businesses from every sector, from all sizes, has been wonderful to hear, because we are trying to get that information out, especially some clarification. That's what the businesses are looking for. They can read the government messaging like anybody else, but the devil is in the details, as they always say. And certainly what they've been asking us to do is to get some clarification. I've got a great contact at the federal government who is the chief of staff for the Minister of Small Business, Economic Development and Trade. And so I've been sending him these questions, like as one I got this morning was, all these programs, I'm self-employed, but my business is incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
Can I still access this funding? And I got in writing an affirmative, yes, they can. So being able to just clarify those little tiny points that can make a huge difference in the life of a business person, I see as kind of my role in all this, and certainly just being able to get that information and get that clarification into the hands of the people that are making decisions. And I think one of the things in this whole exercise that we're going through has been, I think the governments, I should say, have been totally caught off guard at how quickly businesses react to a change in the environment. And as welcome as the federal announcement was yesterday, and certainly the simplifying of the different programs that are out there, now rolling everybody all into one, whether you qualify for EI or don't qualify for EI, or you're staying home with kids, everybody is now in that same situation. Employers no longer have to lay people off, they can just furlough them. It's too bad this wasn't done a week ago, because businesses saw the writing on the wall and they started laying people off immediately. And I think there's over 1 million people applied for EI last, and the government has now gone to this simpler system, and a lot of those people are all going to be rolled into this new one. And that's just an example of how businesses need things to be simple, and they need to be fast, because businesses don't sit around and wait. They make decisions today, and they all started right away laying people off.
And speaking of making decisions, Suzanne, we saw the announcement coming down from the city of Quinte West with regards to state of emergency. Thoughts on that, and what communications have you been seeing so far when it comes to that announcement?
I will say I was surprised by it. I did not see that coming. My understanding, unless things have changed overnight, is that the whole Hastings and Prince Edward region have only got 5 cases of COVID-19. All 5 of those are travel related, or like close contact with somebody who was travel related. So there hasn't been any evidence of community spread so far in our area. Hastings, Prince Edward is a huge region geographically, so I'm not even sure where those 5 cases are, if they're spread out or if they're all in one community. So I haven't seen necessarily a real acceleration of there being a problem here in this area. So I'm not really sure what suddenly sparked it, but I'm sure the city of Quinte West had a good reason for doing it. I'm just not really sure what that is at this point.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. And Jill, what are some of the reactions you've been hearing from folks out there and business owners when it comes to the federal change of tone, perhaps, on how easy they can get assistance if they need to?
Again, I think what I'm hearing more from the ones who are caught, or who aren't going to be able to access some of the things. Or if it's an employee relief, that's great. If they can apply for EI as a self-employed person, that's great, but it doesn't cover their operational costs. So that seems to be the challenge. We just, Suzanne and I were both just on a call with the Minister of Heritage, Culture, Tourism, and Sport, and it occurred to me that many of our small retailers, boutiques, small restaurants actually operate as a tourism type operation to our communities, especially in the shoulder seasons. So they've identified at $1.5 million to try and help support them through the relief process, as well as recovery. And I'm going to be asking whether or not there's a portion of that money that may be able to be allocated, or whether there's small businesses that fit into that category may be able to apply because they're considered non-essential. So it's the non-essential businesses that are really feeling the pressure right now, because really the equity that they have in their business is in their inventory and their goodwill with their customers. This also extends to salons. Those are the ones, the face-to-face, custom-based businesses are the ones who are suffering the most right now. And as Suzanne said, how quickly it changes for them without cash flow. And they're ability to, I mean, tax deferrals are great, but if you can't even pay the rent. So hopefully we'll have landlords that look long term, that say, you know, we'd rather have you here than not in 2 months, and we'll see some forgiveness or some leniency there. Certainly the property tax deferrals from the city of Belleville have been helpful. Everything helps. The question is it going to be enough?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised the rent issue though, because, you know, is that kind of one of the main topics you've been hearing from your members in the chamber with Belleville? Is it more rent, or is it more, you know, long term coming down the road? Because this is happening so fast.
I would say this is a situation that is a day by day, everything changes. Days feel, one day feels like a week with how much information we have to process, and we have no idea when this will end. That it's the unknown, I think, that's most frightening, and the sense that if we can get through April 1st, will we get through May 1st? And so that's the immediate pressure. So I think people are quite resilient, and I think business owners and entrepreneurs tend to be. Again, there are other businesses I've heard that are fine. So if you can work from home and support your customer base from a remote location, even us at the chamber, we can do that. Even our visitor services sector, everything is moving to an online base anyway, so we can support people remotely. But when you can't do that, that is the question. And then certainly from a manufacturing side, we're hearing, as supply chains are slowing and as production levels decrease because of lack of purchasing, that is also going to be a huge thing. And I think Suzanne probably can comment on that as well.
Yes, Suzanne, please chime in, because I mean, this whole area is so heavy on manufacturing with food as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think from the manufacturing side, especially in food production and some other things, they still are able to keep working. They're able to, you know, keep their operations going. One of the difficulties that many of them are having, though, is having staff not coming into work. They could be for a variety of reasons. They may have gone, you know, south or come back from a vacation, so they're in quarantine. There may be somebody who's thinks they may be sick, or, you know, they may be showing symptoms, so they are self-isolating until they're sure that they are going to be fine. There could be people that are either taking care of somebody in one of those positions, like an elderly parent or somebody. They may be at home looking after young children that suddenly can't go to daycare or can't go to school. So most of the operations that are still open, and that this applies not only to manufacturers, but auto mechanics and grocery stores and other places that are still in full operation, are just having having that challenge of working with less staff. And some of our local manufacturers are actually busier than ever. There may be, you know, we've got some in the area that make medical tubing for respirators, like that. So they're actually busier than ever, but they're still having those challenges around, available workforce. So we've got a multitude of different challenges out there that businesses are working through. But I would definitely agree with Jill around the financial aspect of it. We did a survey recently in Quinte West in partnership with the City of Quinte West and the Trenton DBIA. And throughout the survey, that financial uncertainty certainly came through, and it was definitely one of the, you know, top anxieties right now, is that financial stability. Along with that was, you know, lack of customers and workforce shortage, which those three are really all kind of connected together, right? And so, for those smaller enterprises, especially those in the service industry, they've had to shut down because, of course, their customers don't want that one-on-one interaction, whether you're a day spa or a hairdresser, or some of our restaurants, or anybody that's sort of providing services to people. They've had to close down, and they can't get that time back. Like, retailers are being hit hard as well, but as an example, they could still theoretically sell that product when the crisis is over. They've still got that inventory to actually sell. But if you're a service-based industry, that once that Saturday night is gone, you can't sell that dinner again. You can't sell those spa appointments, those hairdressers appointments. Even when you pick up and reopen again, that all that revenue is gone forever. But their fixed costs still remain, such as their insurance and their rent is a big one. I'm working right now with the city of Quinte West to see if we can find a way to offer some zero interest loans to small businesses to help them pay their rent. A lot of our businesses have said the last thing they want to do right now is take on more credit. They really don't want to, go and borrow to help them through this crisis, because when it's over, they've got to pick up the pieces and they still have to pay the money back. So they don't really see it as a big solution. But I think if we could find a loan out there, and we're just looking at different sources through banks and through Transvals and other, those loans, places that are already set up to do loans like that. If we can do that, do a loan that's just specifically for 3 months rent, it's a very fixed cost. It's not a never ending, and it might just take some of that pressure off.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. That's really interesting to know. And Jill, of course, the City of Belleville had made the announcement as a reminder, really, on behalf of the Economic Development Department, that there is that program called Work in Belleville, the Community Database Resume Program. What else have you been hearing from City Hall and your partners over there when it comes to making sure that, as Suzanne mentioned, employers that need workers can get them effectively and efficiently right now?
Well, that's been an ongoing problem. So, I mean, this isn't new. I think we'll see if there's a bit of a shift. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's busy time.
Go figure, right? This is the advantage of working at home.
Exactly.
They're always accessible. Anyway, the employment shortage hasn't changed. It will be interesting to see if there's some shift. Like I say, we've heard from Suzanne's perspective that there are some employers who are actually ramping up, and then there are others who are ramping down. Will there be a big shuffle? That's the challenge that we've been hearing from employers all along, is that people are moving from one place to another. The idea of the employer live that the city has been doing, that's not new. So I'm glad to see that they're promoting it more, because it certainly does demonstrate that we have an ongoing job market here that requires workers for more than just entry-level positions as well. So we'll have to see where that goes.
When it comes to businesses retooling, Quinte down in Prince Edward County making national headlines, switching from whiskey and all sorts of things to hand sanitizer. Have you heard anything from your businesses within your membership group about perhaps thinking about retooling to meet the nationwide call?
Yeah, we have one business here in Quinte West that does
not so much.
Yeah, I was going to say they make equipment and specialized clothing for first responders and sort of military and police forces and stuff like that, and they have sort of offered to be able to. They could make surgical gowns and things like that. So I know that we have received some links from the federal government and the provincial government where businesses can actually click on that and let the governments know of how they could possibly retool their workplaces to offer some of these, to meet some of the demands. So I know of one in particular, and I know another company that's got some contacts in China that's trying to bring in some face shields quickly. So, they're all certainly eager to try and do their part to help through the crisis.
Thanks, Suzanne. And Jill, anything you've been hearing?
So there's certainly the call from Quinte Healthcare about asking for supplies, and we've seen a number of people pull together to try and, create inventory for them. We would also, what I've also noticed though too, is some of our restaurants have really come to the forefront. If they can't open, donating inventory and food to the Gleaners Food Bank and other organizations that desperately need it. And then we also have restaurants that have moved to a takeout option. So they have certainly tried to retool so that they can continue to provide service. We're continually trying to push that out through our social media feed, places like Chilango's and the Dugout is working, and I'm going to miss 40 of them that are working hard to Bourbon Street. So people still can get some of their favorite food if they want it. Even Signal Brewery is doing kind of a takeaway food option, and you can order beer with that too. So, and that was one of the things that was announced today as well, that if you are a restaurant with takeout, you can also sell unopened alcohol with that delivery. So that's interesting. We'll see how that rolls out over the next few days. And again, I have to say that we have, oh, maybe did you lose me there for a second?
A little bit, yeah. I think we're back now.
Okay, sorry.
That's
popped
okay.
up saying it's gone. Yeah, so I think what the government has tried to do is certainly in the right direction, and we have to thank, our MPP and our MP for understanding some of the challenges. Now it's just continuing, and Suzanne, great that you have that connection to the federal government to be able to clarify some of the needs for businesses, because that's really the question. How does this work? One of the biggest questions we got was, how do we fill out the ROE? So, providing that information and then special codes that have been developed so that people can identify that they've been laid off or furloughed, so to speak, with regard to COVID.
What gives you hope right now?
Yeah,
and Suzanne, I'll let you start first. Oh, go ahead. You can continue.
Sorry, I was just going to mention also that MP Neil Ellis's staff in their office have been a huge help. Adriana, especially, want to do a big shout out to her, because I've also been sending her some of these questions, trying to get some of the details and the exact language in writing so that I can pass it on to our business members. And so, they're working overtime as well. And I know we've got good connections at MPP Todd Smith's office. They're also doing a lot of work. Jennifer there is my contact, and she's been sending me updates and making sure that I get the answers that I need. So, everyone's working hard to make sure that all of these details are getting out to the businesses. It's one thing for, government to come out with, sweeping, these big sweeping packages of 82 billion, which is now I think 100 billion. But what does that mean to the small local business? How can they apply? Does it actually apply to them? These are the questions that they have, and they're not in these broad statements that are put out there. And so, even though they can't, go on and start applying until April 6th, at least they know that there is some help coming from that. So if their business has shut down, they can at least get a little bit of personal revenue. And I think that's what, they still got to pay the rent on, not only on their business, but they've also got to pay the rent or the mortgage on their own homes, and they have their own personal expenses as well. So when the company shuts down, not only do they have those business expenses, but their own personal expenses, like everybody else that perhaps is working for somebody across the country, also have expenses and homes and families that they need to take care of. So knowing that they too will be able to apply for that emergency relief has been a big a big relief for them. It really has been a confusion for them as to whether or not some of these programs apply to them. So it's been great being able to get that information to them. And I really see that as being our number one role. It really is about communication. Everybody needs to get the facts and being able to get it to them quickly and in a very focused way, because again, a lot of these government announcements are for everybody. So there's a little bit for this and a little bit for that, and there's social programs, and so whereas we're just focusing on the business side of it. So we can take that information and drill it down into what does it mean for businesses in this big package, and then get that into the hands of our members. And of course, we've got help with this too. You know, we're part of a big network with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. They've got experts that are helping us. And you know, if we have questions, we can also go to them, and they're doing their part to also drill it down and to get that business focus on some of their messaging. So, you know, we're part of a big team here, and at the end of the day, our focus is the health and of our business community. I want to make sure that when this is all over, that recovery can start right away, that our businesses are healthy. That's why, you know, even last week when things were starting to change quite drastically with the closure of the restaurants, and of course, very shortly after, a lot of the other service industries shut down as well, they could see the writing on the wall. And I said to them, you know, you're going to have to lay people off. It's sad. And for a lot of these businesses, this is their heart and soul. Some of them haven't been open very long. Some of them, it's their first business. Their employees, they're pretty small shops. It may be 3 or 4 people. And laying off someone who's perhaps a friend or a colleague has been very difficult. And I said, but you have no choice, because if you drain all of your savings and all of your resources to paying an employee that isn't able to work for you right now, you're going to have nothing left when it's time to think about recovery. You're going to have nothing left to invest in what it is that you need to invest in, whether it's marketing or advertising or you know, social, whatever. They need to keep something back. So it was very hard advice to give, but I want to make sure that all these businesses are still viable and can actually come back and maybe even stronger than ever when this is all over.
Yeah, well, Jill and Suzanne, we're all on Team Canada right now, and we're all working together, socially distancing, of course. Thank you so much for taking the time and all your efforts as we continue to navigate this ongoing situation together with all sorts of information. So thank you to Jill Raycroft, the CEO of Chamber of Belleville, and of course Suzanne Andrews, the manager of the Chamber in Quinte West. Thank you, ladies, so much. Have a good afternoon, and hopefully we can all get through this together a little bit more quicker. All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Yes, you too. That was Quinte Connection for this week. Once again, as we continue to bring you updates across our community with regards to response on COVID-19. Thank you once again to Suzanne Andrews and Jill Raycroft providing us insight on what the business community is doing in Quinte West and Belleville. But for now, I'm Linsdey Harren, and thank you so much for joining us on Quinte Connection.